There are songs from the 1960s and 70s that don't just play. They reach in and settle something. They sound like a kitchen on a Saturday morning, like a long drive with someone you loved, like summers that felt like they'd never end. Here are 15 songs of the 60s and 70s that warm you better than anything today. Number 15, You Are the Sunshine of My Life by Stevie Wonder, 1972.
You are the sunshine of my life.
Stevie Wonder was 21 years old when he recorded Talking Book in 1972, the album that opened his great run of 1970s records. You Are the Sunshine of My Life opens with Wonder counting in the song, and that moment of counting, casual, warm, almost like he forgot the mic was live, sets the tone for a recording that feels more intimate than a formal pop production has any right to feel. Wonder wrote the song and played many of the instruments himself. The lead vocals for the first two verses were sung by session vocalists Jim Gilstrap and Laney Groves.
Though I've loved you for a million years.
A production choice that gives the opening of the track a quality of voices you don't quite recognize before Wonder takes over fully. The song reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1973 and won the Grammy Award for Best Pop Vocal Performance, Male, at the 1974 ceremony. It also won the Grammy for Best Rhythm and Blues Song. The warmth of the recording, the lightness of it, the sense that something genuinely good is happening, has never faded in the 50 years since it was made.
The sunshine of my life.
Number 14, What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, 1967.
I see trees of green.
Louis Armstrong recorded What a Wonderful World in August 1967, at a time when the song's optimism was not, by any objective assessment of the world outside the studio, obviously warranted. The United States was at war in Vietnam. American cities had seen riots and assassinations. Armstrong, who was 66 years old at the time of the recording, had been through the full range of American experience that a black man born in New Orleans in 1901 would have encountered over 6 decades. The song was written by Bob Thiele and George David Weiss specifically for Armstrong, and it was recorded at ABC Records in New York. ABC President Larry Newton initially refused to release it in the United States, believing a song with no youth appeal and no rock edge was commercially worthless.
What a wonderful world.
It was released in the United Kingdom and reached number 1 there. It did not chart in the United States until its use in the 1987 film Good Morning Vietnam, at which point it reached number 32. Armstrong had died in 1971. 16 years before the American audience he had been denied found the record. The performance is not technically complex. Armstrong's voice in 1967 was rougher than it had been in earlier decades, abraded by decades of playing and singing. That roughness is part of what makes the performance work. It is the voice of someone old enough to know what the world can be like, and choosing, with full knowledge of that, to find it wonderful.
What a wonderful world.
Number 13, Lean on Me by Bill Withers, 1972.
Lean on me.
Bill Withers came to music late, releasing his debut album at the age of 30 in 1970 after working for years as an aircraft mechanic for the United States Navy and in factory work before that. He brought to his songwriting a quality that comes from having lived as a working person. The music was about actual life, written by someone who knew what it was to depend on people and to have people depend on him. Lean on Me was recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Sheffield, Alabama, with the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, Barry Beckett, Roger Hawkins, David Hood, and Jimmy Johnson. These 4 musicians had played together so long that the sound they produced had become something beyond the sum of the individual parts.
Sometimes in our lives
Withers drew on memories of Slab Fork, West Virginia, the small coal mining community where he had grown up, a place where dependence on neighbors was not a sentiment, but a practical condition of daily survival. The song reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in July 1972 and spent 3 weeks at the top. It has been covered hundreds of times and performed at events of collective grief and celebration for over 50 years. Withers walked away from the music industry in 1985 and never returned. He died in March 2020. The song that emerged from his memories of a West Virginia mining town has outlasted every musical trend that surrounded it. Number 12, Sunshine on My Shoulders by John Denver, 1974.
Sunshine on my shoulders.
John Denver wrote Sunshine on My Shoulders in the winter of 1971 in Minneapolis, during a period of gray and difficult weather. He was sitting in his car on a day when the sun had finally appeared after a long stretch without it, and the specific emotional response to that appearance, the relief, the almost physical warmth of something that had been missing, became the song. It was recorded and first released in 1971, but reached its greatest commercial success when re-released in 1974, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in March of that year. Denver's voice had a quality of openness, a lack of guile or performance,
Sunshine in my eyes.
That was either entirely natural or an extraordinarily well-maintained fiction, and the evidence from everyone who spent time around him suggests it was natural. He was, by most accounts, the person he seemed to be on records. That quality is audible in Sunshine on My Shoulders, in a way that makes the song something different from a similar song performed with more distance between the singer and the material. He died in October 1997 when the experimental aircraft he was piloting crashed into Monterey Bay, California. He was 53 years old. The songs he left are full of that specific quality of uncomplicated appreciation for the physical world. Mountains, sky, sunlight, that feels rarer the older you get.
Almost always.
Number 11, Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, 1970.
Like a bridge over.
Paul Simon wrote Bridge Over Troubled Water and gave the lead vocal to Art Garfunkel, a decision that Simon later said he regretted. Not because the performance was wrong, but because Garfunkel's performance was so completely right that it became the song's identity. Larry Knechtel, a Los Angeles session pianist, played the piano part. Simon sat to the side of the stage at live performances while Knechtel played and Garfunkel sang, and audiences gave them standing ovations. And Simon told Rolling Stone in 1972, "That's my song, guy." The recording was made in New York and Los Angeles in 1969, produced by Simon and Garfunkel alongside Roy Haley. The gospel influence on the song, specifically a recording by the Swan Silvertones in which Claude Jeter sang the phrase, "I'll be your bridge over deep water," is audible in the piano and in the building orchestral arrangement that accompanies the third verse. The third verse itself was written last, and the decision to go as large as the arrangement does for that final section was a production choice that Simon and Garfunkel debated before committing to it. The single reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on January 20th, 1970, and spent 6 weeks there. The album Bridge Over Troubled Water won 6 Grammy Awards in 1971, including Album of the Year, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year. It was the last thing the two men made together as an active creative unit. The song has been used at memorial services, at graduations, in hospitals, in moments of personal crisis and national grief for more than 50 years, because it promises something specific and delivers it.
I will lay me down.
Number 10, Moondance by Van Morrison, 1970.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance.
Van Morrison recorded Moondance at A&R Studios in New York in the summer and fall of 1969, working with a core of jazz-influenced musicians who gave the album and the title track a sound unlike what rock radio was producing at the time. Morrison had recently moved to Woodstock, New York, and the recordings reflected a kind of settled autumn evening quality that felt removed from both the psychedelic experimentation of the late 1960s and the heavier direction that rock was beginning to take.
You know the night's magic.
Moondance was written by Morrison and features a soprano saxophone played by Jack Schroer alongside a rhythm section and horn arrangement that give the song the feel of a jazz standard rather than a rock track. Morrison's vocal on the recording, the specific way he phrases around the beat, stretching syllables and compressing them in ways that feel improvised even when they aren't, is one of the great vocal performances of the era. The song was not released as a single at the time of the album's release. It became a radio staple through the album and has been one of the most played songs in American radio history for over 50 years.
Seem to whisper and hey.
Number 9, You've Got a Friend by James Taylor, 1971.
Winter, spring, summer, or fall.
Carole King wrote You've Got a Friend quickly in a single sitting in early 1971. She has described it as one of those songs that felt less like composition and more like taking dictation, the whole thing arriving at once. She recorded it herself for her album Tapestry, which was released in February 1971. James Taylor, who was a friend of King's and had been present during some of the Tapestry recording sessions, recorded his version of the song for his own album, Mudslide Slim and the Blue Horizon, released 2 months later. Taylor's version reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in July 1971 and spent 2 weeks there.
And I'll be there, yeah.
King's version on Tapestry, the album that spent 15 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 1972, is the version most associated with the song's origin. But Taylor's recording has its own specific character, quieter, more intimate, the arrangement stripped to its essentials in a way that puts all the weight on the lyric and his delivery of it. The song won the Grammy Award for Best Pop Vocal Performance, male for Taylor, at the 1972 ceremony. Both recordings are still in regular circulation. The song's central promise, that when you need a friend, one will come, is simple enough to feel like a cliché until you hear either of these recordings, at which point it feels like the most important thing anyone has ever told you.
You've got a friend.
Number 8, Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles, 1969.
Here comes the sun.
George Harrison wrote Here Comes the Sun in the spring of 1969 in the garden of his friend Eric Clapton's house in Surrey. He had been away from the Beatles and the Apple Corps offices for a day, walking through the garden with an acoustic guitar while the daffodils were coming up, and the specific feeling of relief at being away from the office at the arrival of spring after a long winter became the song. It was, by Harrison's own account, one of the easiest things he ever wrote. The recording was made at Abbey Road Studios in July and August 1969, part of the sessions that would produce the Abbey Road album. Harrison played the acoustic guitar part on a Martin D28.
Here comes the sun, I say.
The arrangement builds from that acoustic opening through a progression of overdubs that include Harrison's electric guitar, McCartney's bass, and the Moog synthesizer passages that Harrison played. Ringo Starr's drumming on the recording is notable for the way it supports without overplaying. a quality he brought consistently to the Beatles' best work. Here Comes the Sun was never released as a single by the Beatles. It became one of the most streamed Beatles songs of all time, a song that never had a chart position because chart positions didn't apply to Abbey Road album tracks, because people found it and kept finding it and sent it forward to the people they loved.
I say, it's alright.
Number 7, Take Me Home, Country Roads by John Denver, 1971. Take Me Home, Country Roads was written by John Denver, Bill Danoff, and Taffy Nivert. Danoff and Nivert had written the bulk of the song and were performing it at a show in Washington, D.C., when Denver heard it and offered to help finish it. The three of them worked on it together through the night in Danoff and Nivert's apartment, and Denver recorded it shortly afterward. It was released in April 1971 and reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song is set in West Virginia and references the Shenandoah River and the Blue Ridge Mountains, though both of those features are predominantly in Virginia rather than West Virginia, a geographical imprecision that West Virginians have been noting and forgiving in roughly equal measure for 50 years.
I hear her voice in the morning hours.
In 2014, Take Me Home, Country Roads was designated one of the official state songs of West Virginia by an act of the state legislature, a recognition that the geography no longer mattered as much as what the song made people feel about the place. Denver's recording has the quality of something he personally needed to say. His voice on the track has the specific warmth of someone singing about a home they carry inside them rather than a place they currently live. The song was played at his memorial service when he died in 1997. It was sung at the 2002 Winter Olympics closing ceremony. It has been adopted by sports fans, by homesick expatriates, by people in dozens of countries who have never been to West Virginia and feel the song's emotion anyway. Number 6, The Sound of Silence by Simon & Garfunkel, 1965.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Paul Simon wrote The Sound of Silence in 1963 in his bathroom in Queens, New York, with the lights off. He was 19 years old. He has described going into the bathroom at night because the acoustic quality of the small tiled room gave his voice and guitar a reverb he liked, and because the darkness helped him concentrate. The version of the song that became a hit was not that original acoustic recording. Producer Tom Wilson added electric guitar, bass, and drums to the existing tape in 1965 without consulting Simon or Garfunkel. This electric version was released in September 1965 and reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on January 1st, 1966. Simon's reaction to the overdubbing was complicated.
When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a...
He was in England when it happened, working the British folk club circuit. The song he had written in a dark bathroom in Queens had been electrically amplified without his knowledge and was now the number 1 song in America. He came back, the partnership reconvened, and what followed, Sounds of Silence, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, Bookends, Bridge Over Troubled Water, was one of the most significant catalogs in 1960s popular music. The original acoustic version is the purer expression of what Simon wrote. The electric version is what reached people. Both have a quality of stillness inside the sound, the paradox of a song about the sound of silence being made of music. That gives it a specific meditative quality that holds up across 60 years of repeated listening.
The sound of silence.
Number 5, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face by Roberta Flack, 1972.
Ever I saw your face.
Ewan MacColl, the Scottish folk singer and political activist, wrote The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face in 1957 for the folk singer Peggy Seeger, who later became his wife. He wrote it over the phone to her while she was in America, performing it down the line so she could hear it. The song is about the experience of a first encounter with the person you love, a complete and overwhelming recognition, and it was written in the immediate grip of that feeling. Roberta Flack recorded it for her debut album, First Take, in 1969. The recording sat largely unknown until director Clint Eastwood used a portion of it in his 1971 film, Play Misty for Me.
Rose in your eyes.
The song was re-released as a single in February 1972 and reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, where it stayed for 6 weeks. It won the Grammy Award for Record of the Year in 1973. Flack's recording is one of the slowest moving #1 singles in American chart history. It runs 4.5 minutes at a tempo that gives every word space to land and settle. Her vocal performance, the control of it, the restraint, the way she holds back and then releases, is a demonstration of what it sounds like when a great singer finds the perfect material. The song had been waiting 15 years for this specific voice to find it.
Moon and the stars.
Number 4, Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton, 1977.
It's late in the evening.
Eric Clapton wrote Wonderful Tonight in a few minutes in 1976 while waiting for Pattie Boyd, who was then his wife, to finish getting ready to go to a Paul McCartney party. The small domestic impatience of the moment, the waiting, the eventual appearance of the person you're waiting for, became a song in the time it took for her to finish her preparations. Clapton has said he wrote it on an acoustic guitar in the room while she was still getting dressed. It was recorded for the album Slow Hand and released in 1977. The production, lush but not overproduced, built around Clapton's clean electric guitar tone, gives the song a warmth that matches the intimacy of the original moment.
You look wonderful tonight.
The guitar tone on the recording is one of Clapton's most distinctive choices, an almost liquid quality that sits perfectly under the vocal without ever competing with it. He had spent years playing at volumes and levels of intensity that made this kind of restraint notable. The song reached number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has spent the decade since becoming one of the most played songs at weddings anywhere in the English-speaking world. The specific domestic scene it describes, waiting for someone you love, watching them come into a room looking beautiful, driving home at night while they sleep in the passenger seat, is the kind of ordinary moment that songs rarely dignify and that this one made permanent. Number 3, What the World Needs Now Is Love by Jackie DeShannon, 1965.
World needs now is love.
Hal David wrote the lyric and Burt Bacharach wrote the melody of What the World Needs Now Is Love in 1965. And the two men together constituted one of the most reliable commercial songwriting partnerships of the 1960s. They brought the song to Jackie DeShannon, who had been recording for several years with success as a songwriter, but had not yet broken through commercially as a recording artist. The recording they made together has a quality of genuine conviction that goes beyond the polish of the production. DeShannon's voice on the track has a warmth and a directness that the song required. It is a song with a thesis, a specific and unfashionable claim about what matters.
It's now is love, sweet love.
And the performance needed to communicate it without irony or self-consciousness. DeShannon delivers it that way. The Bacharach arrangement, the strings, the gentle percussion, the space he leaves in the production, supports without overwhelming. The song reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 in June 1965. It was nominated for the Grammy Award for Record of the Year. It has been covered by dozens of artists in the decades since. The claim at its center, that love is what is needed, more than any particular thing, seems almost too simple to make into a song, and yet, in this recording, manages to feel like the most important thing anyone has said in 3 minutes.
But for everyone.
Number 2, Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell, 1969.
Rows and flows of angel hair.
Joni Mitchell wrote Both Sides Now in 1966 at the age of 22 on an airplane over the United States while reading Saul Bellows' novel, Henderson the Rain King. A passage in the novel about looking down at clouds from an airplane set her thinking, and the song emerged during the flight. The version that became famous in 1969 was recorded by Judy Collins, whose recording reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. Mitchell recorded her own version for her debut album, Song to a Seagull, but Collins's version was the commercial breakthrough. Mitchell's original recording has a quality of youth that the lyrics somewhat belies. She was 22, writing about clouds and love and life from a perspective that sounds like someone much further into those experiences.
So many things I would have done.
Her voice on the early recordings of the song is clear and high. When she returned to Both Sides Now for a 2000 orchestral album, her voice had deepened and roughened with time, and the song meant something different in that version because the singer was different. The version most people know, Collins' 1969 recording, has a specific place in the cultural landscape of the late 1960s, arriving at a moment when the idealism of the decade was giving way to something more complicated, and the song's specific quality of seeing beauty and limitation simultaneously felt exactly right.
Still somehow it's life.
Number 1, The Rose by Bette Midler, 1979.
Some say love.
Amanda McBroom wrote The Rose, and Bette Midler recorded it for the 1979 film of the same name, in which Midler played a rock singer modeled in part on Janis Joplin. McBroom wrote the song after watching the film being made and having a conversation with its director, Mark Rydell, about what the film's ending needed. The song was supposed to capture something about endurance and renewal after loss, a counterweight to the tragedy of the film's conclusion. McBroom wrote it in an afternoon. She has described the experience as unusual in its completeness. The whole thing arrived at once, the metaphor and the melody and the structure simultaneously. Midler's recording for the film was produced by Paul Rothchild, who had produced The Doors and Janis Joplin and understood the specific emotional territory the song was operating in. Midler's performance on the recording is one of the great ballad performances of the decade. She has a voice capable of enormous range and power, and the specific choice she makes on The Rose is largely one of restraint.
It is a hunger.
She builds across the song, but she doesn't arrive at full power until the moment the song demands it, and that moment lands because of everything that was held back before it. The song reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1980 after its release as a single from the film's soundtrack. Midler received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for the film. The Rose received an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song. The metaphor at the center of the song, the seed under the snow, the rose in winter waiting to bloom, is the kind of image that sounds simple until you've been through enough winters to understand what it's really saying. That is what the songs on this list have in common. They get more true the older you get, not less. They were made by people who understood something about time and warmth and what it means to carry a feeling forward, and that understanding has no expiration date.
Becomes the road.
If any of these warmed something up in you today, hit the like button and subscribe. There are more playlists and deep dives like this one waiting.